Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Srimad Bhagavatam Canto Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind association. As we continue, Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2, Chapter 6, verses 1 to 7. The course, let's just change that. Give me one sec. I should be able to see my screen. Just confirm. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitatam Pavanabhyo Vishnubhyo Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Ti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesa Sunyavari Pastakyari Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Sapala Sarva Siddhantaratnadya Sarva Lokayatri Prada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidvando Didatitya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prompt translator of all the Vedas, you are enriched with jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You actual Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varshasharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you undertains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mat Sangim Mad Guru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Asadu sadhu tadayina tini chochatara kahana muncha kada chinmam premnari katayospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O giver of saintliness to unsaintly, O uplifted the very fallen, please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest, my heart and my throat, accompany your love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yatonvayaditarata Chate Swabhigna Swarat Tene Brahma Hidayadi Kavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kwakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Sarvasva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I made it upon Lord Shri Krishna because he's the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction, manifest universe. Verses. He's directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in delusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of what is seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universe is temporarily manifest by the reactions of three modes of nature perfection, although they are unreal. I therefore merit upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, because he is Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existing in a transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I merit upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpaisha sabhya kalavasmin yuge jana mandas mandamadayo mandabhagya padrata. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayan namaskritya narochevam narottamam devim saraswati vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance to the personality of God and Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai pumsa parodharmo yato bhaktira dochaje adakshaje ahoitukeya pratyata yayatma suprasiddhati. Supreme occupation dharma of all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the terms of the law of such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted, completely satisfied the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyat Vairagyam Jnanam Chayar Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service under the person of the Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately causes knowledge and detachment from the Vadanti tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth called as non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma Bhagavan. Shri Shri Shroshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Chita Nishevanat. Who twice sponsors by serving those devotees who completely free from all by his great services done. By such service, one gains a funny for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakada Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ryadanta Stoya Badrani Vidunati Surit Satam. Shri Krishna, the person of the Godhead, who is Paramatma, Supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayasha Bhadresha Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatutama Sloke Bhaktir Bhaviti Nashtagid. By regular attendance in the classes of the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service. To the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. The loving service unto the person of the Godhead, who is praised or transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Abhyam Swadharmam Parinishtaya Janmalabha Param Pumsam Ante Narayana Smiti. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic power, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of God at the end of life. Akama Sarva Kama Va Moksha Kama Udarati Vrena Bhakti Yogena Yajate Purusham Param. A person who has broad intelligence, whether he be full of all material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole personality of God. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of the Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya with the National Society of Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us cover any feedback that you have from last week's session, chapter 5, covered the last part of chapter 5. If you have any specific recollection, thoughts, feedback from that section, please type that in the chat. Dhamavati says, Hare Krishna. Linking everything to the pleasure of Guru Mahachila Prabhupada and Krishna, even brushing our teeth, aspiring to see Krishna face to face, going back to the spiritual Sanatan Ska, our real home, where there's no difference between body and soul. And yes, you eat the sweet ball there. Yes, using our time valuably to perfect our lives and returning to our beloved Lord. Krishna invites us back to God at Bhagavad Gita 18:16. Yes, we covered these aspects. And as mentioned, there is rasa, there is lila, pastimes, and there is tattva, truth. And we are attracted to pastimes, your stories, pastimes related to Krishna. At the same time, we cannot neglect the tattva, the truth, the proper understanding. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says both are required. And therefore, we see Srila Prabhupada has blended both. Prabhupada has given, for example, Krishna book. He just didn't give Krishna book only with the pastimes. He gave Krishna book with the philosophy, with the truth. Because if you just hear the pastimes without proper understanding of the tattva, then they can be challenges in for example, not understanding Krishna properly and therefore thinking that Krishna's pastimes are material. In certain cases, Krishna does not. In the pastimes, we find Krishna may respond according to how he wants to respond, but when we are the pastimes, we want Krishna to respond the way we want him to respond, and therefore we feel, no man, Krishna didn't do the right thing, etc. We may become sahajas. So in this way, hearing the philosophy is very, very important. At the same time, we also don't want to make the philosophy an obstacle. So then we're trying to understand everything very intellectually, and that becomes an obstacle. Certain things we understand, certain things we don't understand. At least we begin to appreciate and understand the most essential philosophical teachings of Krishna consciousness. What the Bhagavatam is doing is that the Bhagavatam is fine-tuning, sandpapering. When somebody is molding a deity, molding a form, first you take some clay and you start molding the clay in a like a high-level form of what you want. Then you start refining the form, giving more details. Then you start, once the form is done, then you start fine-tuning, sandpapering, smoothing it up. Then you start painting. So like that, different layers of fine-tuning. The Bhagavatam does that. Why? Because our heart needs to be completely pure for the smiling face of the 10th canto of Krishna to enter into our heart, for us to go into that spiritual environment. So therefore, the fine-tuning is there. There may be certain philosophical aspects that we just don't understand, we cannot just get our head around it, so we put it on the back burner and leave it there. By practice of Krishna consciousness, one day we will realize that. Mother Sharina says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance appreciation. Thank you for the wonderful classes. I was contemplating how vast and complex Krishna's creation is. To think that I've taken birth in different universes, in different bodies, across different ages is mind-boggling. To think that I can continue from one birth to the next aimlessly is worrying. That's when I started to think about Srila Prabhupada's mercy and how he has made Krishna so accessible, and that gives me hope. The statement below from Prabhupada's purport became so important. Only by the attainment of service attitude in transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God. Wonderful contemplation and realization. Sharina, yes. We've been moving from one Brahmanda to another Brahmanda. From one universe to another universe, one planet to another planet, from one country to another country, one species to another species, from one mother to another mother, from one father to another father. For billions and billions and billions and billions, it's explained so many lifetimes, it's practically eternality. And now, by the mercy of Krishna, we've got Guru, and by the mercy of Guru, we get Krishna. So, yes, we've been moving, traveling from one place to another, aimlessly trying to find Krishna. But we're looking in the wrong place, trying to find real happiness, looking in the wrong place. And if you're looking in the wrong place, what you want is not wrong. But where you're looking is wrong. Sometimes you may have that experience. You lose something. And let's say you lost something at the temple. You left it at the temple. You must place it at the temple. And then you come home. And now you're looking for it at home. And you're looking here and looking there and looking all over and you're wondering, where is this thing? I had it with me. I know I had it with me. In the meantime, it's at the temple. You lost it, you misplaced it there. But you look, so yes, you've lost something. It is yours, but you're looking for it in the wrong place and you will never, ever find it. So our rightful inheritance is eternal service, loving service to the Supreme Lord, eternality, bliss, full of knowledge, festival every day. That's our birthright. But we're looking for that in the wrong place. So the pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada comes into our life, and that itself it's extremely good fortune, beyond good fortune. Fortune to the square fortune. And the more we understand who Srila Prabhupada is, what Srila Prabhupada has done, and who he is, just makes us more and more grateful. Never ever to leave Krishna consciousness. Because it's not ordinary. It's not just like another society that we join. No, it's not ordinary. This is extraordinary. This is the truth, the absolute truth. So yes, we need to realize this, and the more you contemplate on it, it goes deeper and deeper until it sinks in to the deep core of our fiber, of our being, that we will never, ever turn back. We become convinced that yes, this is who I am. I'm meant to be a servant of Krishna. This is what I need to do. I need to now embrace the process completely. Good. Shamananda Prabhu says, thanks for explaining about the exit points where in the material realm to go to the spiritual. We are close to the exit through Srila Prabhupada's mercy and should try our best to take advantage of this. Yes. We're right at the door. It's just about opening the door and out we go. We're right there. Everything, Srila Prabhupada said, everything you need to know is in my books. So really speaking, we cannot say, I did not have the knowledge to perfect my life. We cannot say, I did not have the process to perfect my life. Everything is right in our hands. But as complicated beings, we really complicate life and complicate Krishna consciousness. Right. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback. So the same quote that Sharina spoke about, I also quoting that again. Prabhupada writes, but one can get complete liberation from all the above mentioned material pangs when one enters into the eternal Brahmaloka Sanatan atmosphere, the kingdom of God. Therefore, liberation as contemplated by the speculative philosophers and mystics is possible only when one becomes a devotee of them. Anyone who is not a devotee cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God. Therefore, the speculative philosophers as well as the mystics must first of all be attracted to devotional cult before they can factually attain liberation. When they say there is only path, only one way, only one path, only one way back home, Christians, they normally say only one way. Yes, there's only one way. And what's the one way? Pure devotional service. Without that cultivation of pure devotional service, the attitude to render loving pure devotional service to Krishna, there is no way in entering the spiritual world. So it doesn't matter what you take. You can take yoga, you can take mystic perfection, you can take all the philosophical variations and different parts that are there in creation, infinite variations that are there of the different processes given by the Supreme Lord, infinite different personalities that can link you and get you started and crank you up and inspire you and motivate you. There's infinite number. But they all need to diverge or converge. And you all need to converge. Diverge is this way. They all need to converge to one single point. Pure devotional service. Not material devotional service. Not mixed devotional service. Pure devotional service. Anya bilasita sunyam jnana karmana vitam anukulyena krishna nishidanam bhaktir utam. Pure devotional service as defined by Srila Rupa Goswami and elaborated by Srila Prabhupada in his Bhaktivedanta purports. That is the objective. So human form of life is meant for that. Nothing else. And our life should be molded. We should be cultivating this. We should be molding ourselves more and more. Yes, we, as that same example, we like a lump of clay that's there. And now, by the process of Krishna consciousness, getting molded into that original servant that we eternally have a relationship with Krishna, we're getting molded into that form, simply by applying the process of Krishna. In regards to our session last week, there was also a question that devotee asked, and I'm going to answer that question here for everyone as well. So here in this picture, and this is not my picture. In fact, nothing that I say and nothing that I share is mine. So all credits go to all the disciples and all the disciplic succession, Srila Prabhupada, his followers, etc., that put these things together. I'm just a postman trying to deliver in my limited capacity whatever I'm hearing. So all credits go to them. So in this picture also, the artist put in this comment, a realm of 33 million demigods and demons. So the question was, are there also demons in this higher region? And also this 33 million. And yes, I'm not sure what the intention was in terms of this, but from my limited reading and understanding, I will share. We know that the higher realms is the place for the suras, the divine personalities, the demigods. And the place lower than earth is for the asuras. Generally, that's the category, those who are demonic in nature. The more pious you are, the higher you go. The more sinful you are, the lower you go. And earth, there is both variations. Now, in terms of the demigods, the suras, there's 33 categories of demigods. And in that 33 category, there are a number of assistant demigods. It's described as like 1,000. If you look at a cabinet, you get the president, in this case, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And then you get the president with his ministers. And then the minister also has his department with others serving him. So like that, you got Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you got the demigods. And you could even say you got the main principal demigods. Krishna himself as like Mahavishnu, then Brahma, Lord Shiva. Then you got the different 33 categories of demigods. Under them you have his department. It's explained each one has 1,000 in their department, and then those 1,000 have even more. So in this way, everyone in essence that's living in the heavenly planets, they suras, the demigods, the higher beings. And therefore sometimes explain there are 33 categories of demigods and 333 million demigods. 33 million demigods. So different numbers given, generally 33 million, Prabhupada gives 33 million demigods is there. So like that, different suras. The demons, now they definitely don't reside in the heavenly planets, but there may be situations where the demons take over the heavenly regions. And this happens in different periods of times when the demigods offend the guru, like Indra offended Brihaspati, and they lost all the opulences. Then the demons took over. So like that, demons may also reside in the heavenly planets and from time to time, but that's not their place. Generally, their place is lower down. So the demons generally don't reside in the higher planes. It's not their frequency. You will not gel, you will not align, you will not feel comfortable where your frequency do not match. Like attracts like. So if the higher levels of the realm, they have a higher frequency for in terms of the mode of goodness. The lower frequencies of mode of ignorance. Earth vibrates up and down in between goodness, passion, ignorance. So if you a demonic person and you go to the heavenly planets, it's just this is not frequency, don't gel here. I need to, this is not my life. Too much light here, life darkness. So they're always in the bottom level. All right. Then there was also another question regarding, for example, in another picture, we know that the sun planet, the moon planet, they're all in this region of Suragaloka. And we know that the moon is even from one level of dimension higher than the sun. So this question about people going to the moon. And again, from a higher, when Prabhupada, for example, was watching the first moon landing, 1969, I think. And they had brought the television set. Oh, what can we see? The moon landing, television set. So yes, television was also like just came out. So they hired a television, and everybody was watching. Prabhupada was getting massaged. His eyes were closed. And everyone was stuck to the television seeing the moon landing live. And sure enough, Armstrong landed on the moon. And he took his first step for mankind, giant step for mankind. Could imagine the level of excitement on the planet. And after all that happened, Srila Prabhupada said, right there, episode's finished. Prabhupada said, they did not land on the moon. I could imagine. You seeing it with your eyes. And here's someone that says they did not land on the moon. It's a test of faith. One disciple just couldn't accept that. It's like, no, man, we're seeing it. Seeing is believing, right? That's what they say. And here, pure devotee is saying they did not land on the moon. And Prabhupada gave his reasons. The point is, if you come to visit me, you enter my complex, and you come to my unit, and you walk on my garden, and then you leave. Can we say that you have come to visit me? You came just at the entrance of my garden. You came to the entrance of my house. You didn't come to me. You didn't visit me. You came close. And then somebody asks you, did you go visit the Shringananda? Yes. What did you see? Not just a green grass. So that's not visiting. So like that, if they go And even if they did go to the moon planet, and then you ask them, what did you see? It's got some rocks, and we see sand, and we see sand dunes, and huh? Really? That's not a moon planet. Because our description of the moon planet, that's where the primary, the principal demigods are residing. They Somaras there. Moon planet is heavenly body. There's life there. You only saw sand? You sure you went to the moon? So technically, firstly, they may have gone to another planet which they consider as the moon. Sometimes described as Rahu. Even if they did go to the moon, they didn't go in. They just went to the outer surface. Going to the outer surface, going to the entrance of somebody's complex does not mean visiting. So technically, if you're visiting the moon planet, you will see what's described in the Bhagavatam in relation to the moon planet. You visit, it's like if you had to really come in my home, you'll be seeing me and I can shake your hands and we'll be meeting and chatting, give you some prasad. So that's a meeting. So they should go meet Chandradev, like that. That's going to the moon. The problem is, Prabhupada makes this point again and again, you cannot enter into the heavenly realm through a spacecraft. You can only enter the heavenly realm through piety, not otherwise. Now, here's the interesting thing. There are some that want to, for example, let's take Mars planet. Now they want to create residence in Mars. So they're sending spacecrafts there and they're setting up a whole, village on that planet. Well, that's not the actual planet. The demigods, with their powers, they allow you to come in and not in. There's certain security mechanisms. They don't want you there, you'll never be there. So like that, they also have their own realm and own dimension of life. You can't just gatecrash, unfortunately. So that was in relation to the moon. Whether they went or not, it does not impact my devotional service. My devotional service is dependent on where I am. And therefore, these things are relative. These things we really don't. Yes, it's there, and they may have discussions and controversies and conspiracies, and no problem. We just accept Prabhupada's point. Yes, they didn't go. If they have whatever they have, that's up to them. Our focus is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Right, then I also like to share in terms of, it's a very interesting chart. Shida Swami, the original commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam, he gives the 10 subject matters of the 12 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, starting with, in the first canto, we heard about the 10 subjects: Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam, Uti, Manvantar, Ishanukata, Ashraya, Mukti, and Nirvada. And he says that each of these subjects are discussed in different, there may be duplications or different topics. The same topic may be discussed in some of the cantos, but primarily the third canto discusses Sarga. And we'll come again related to that. When we come to the third canto, it's all about element of creation, the initial aspect of creation. Similar points that we are now going into the second canto, this will come up again in detail in the third canto. Then Visarga, Brahma's creation. Then Sthanam, fifth canto, all about the planetary systems. Then Poshanam, protection and mercy. Jamil, King Chetraketu, Gajendra, all in the sixth canto. Seventh canto, Uti, in terms of the creative impetus, Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. Manvantar, changes of the Manu. Ishanukata, activities of incarnation, Lord Ram, Parshuram described in. then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ashraya, supreme shelter, then Uddhav Gita, Mukti and liberation, which is liberation, and then finally the 12th canto discussing the final dissolution, Kali Yuga, etc., Nirodha. So these are the 10 cantos. But Sridhar Swami makes an interesting point. He says that the first canto is, we know that the first canto is the lotus feet of Krishna. That's discussing the adhikar to hear and speak the Bhagavatam. And second canto is discussing sadhana, means of attachment. So in relation to the first canto, adhikar, in relation to the first canto, he makes the point that there are 3 sections of the first canto where we have the discussion between Sutta Goswami and Shonaka Rishis. We have the discussion with Narad Muni and Vyasadeva, and we have the discussion with Sukadev Goswami Parikshit Maharaj. And from all these 3 dialogues, we can get the adhikar, the qualification required to enter, to glorify the Bhagavatam, to get the mercy of the Bhagavatam, so that the Bhagavatam can purify our hearts, can transform our hearts. And the qualification, the first level. So here the point is, it's not just the speaker being qualified, but also the listeners being qualified. And when both the speaker is enthusiastic, utsaha, and the listeners have jignasu in relation to Sutta Goswami, Shonaka, Rishi, then they can be greater transformation. They can be greater revelation of the Supreme Personality of God. So both can be inspired when these qualities are there. On the second layer, going deeper, between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva, when we have the mercy of the devotee and the mercy of the Supreme Lord, then we can go deeper into the Bhagavatam. And then the highest level of qualification to enter into the Srimad Bhagavatam is the example of Sukadeva Goswami Maharaj Parikshit. Full surrender, Sharanagati. Sukadeva Goswami practically gave up material life and was completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of God. Not bothered with even dressing himself, completely detached, completely surrendered, fully surrendered, Sharanagati. And Maharaj Parikshit, Sharvanya Tyagi, he basically renounced everything to just hear and absorb himself in the Supreme Personality of God. So that's the highest level. So the more we embrace these qualities, these qualifications, the deeper we can enter into Srimad Bhagavatam and associate with Srimad Bhagavatam. And then in the second canto, which we're hearing now, even though the second canto, and even from the first canto, we've been hearing about the process as well, the sadhana, the practice, devotional service. So we'll see as we have been going through these chapters, especially in the second canto, this point comes up again and again. What is the process of perfection that we need to embrace? What are the qualities of this process of sadhana that we need to embrace and solidify in our consciousness so that we can really become eligible to enter into the Supreme Personality of Godhead's life? Then, in terms of just a summary of the 6 questions asked by the sage, 6 questions asked by Narad Muni in regards to creation, Tula Brahma. The first question was the characteristic of the universe. Then, what is the shelter? How is it created? How is it conserved? And what it depends on. So all these 5 questions were answered up to now in terms of what we've covered, in terms of the details of creation. Now, the last question, what is it composed of? The ingredients. This is now what is described in this chapter 6. We're going to be hearing this aspect. Also, how is it conserved? That will also be discussed in this chapter 39. The shelter will also be discussed a little again in text study 1. And then what it depends on will also be discussed in text study 2, but already that has been shared. So we know Narayan is the shelter, Krishna is the shelter. So in this way, the 6 questions are now going to be answered in this chapter 6. What's interesting also to appreciate is, as we're going through the Bhagavatam, never lose sight, never lose focus of the main objective. This is all in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit asked the question, what should a dying man do? Sukadeva Goswami said he must glorify, he must hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So this is all related to Krishna. Even though we are talking about the Purusha avatars and all the details of creation and so much, and you'll see today's verse is also so much details about creation. It's just amazing. What is the focus? What is the objective? What is the essence? The essence is that it should always link us to our Ishtadev, Radha and Krishna. It should inspire us to surrender to Radha and Krishna. It should motivate us that, yes, just see her. This is all what's described is all the potency of the Supreme Personality of God and Krishna. The absolute truth, Radha and Krishna. It's all his potencies. How wonderful. The person I'm loving, the person I'm chanting, the person whose names I'm chanting, the person who I'm trying to surrender to. Just see how amazing, how powerful, how extraordinary, how inconceivable is his potencies. How wonderful. So in this way, we are inspired even by hearing about the creation. Why? Because it's connected to our most worshipful Lord. If you're in love with someone, then you want to hear everything about them. Even the most insignificant things become significant. Now, tell me what you did there. Tell me all the details. So, what to talk about our supreme worshipful form, Radha and Krishna. This is all connected to them. And not directly, but all the expansion of the expansion of the expansion in the form of Mahavishnu, who then expands again in form of Garbhasai Vishnu, who expands again in form of Karandaksai Vishnu. This is all their pastimes. And therefore, in this way, we become inspired more and more. And as we become purified, slowly more and more purification, more and more purification, more and more enthusiasm, more and more eagerness, until the 10th canto, where it's like an explosion. I can't wait. Can't wait. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. With such greed, such eagerness, I want to enter. It's like I'm shaking, I'm getting withdrawal symptoms from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we become qualified. So it's a journey of purification. It's a journey of strengthening our desire. It's a journey of deepening our attachment until there is nothing that we want but to be eternal servants of the divine couple. Right. So we're going to now be covering 17 verses. Let's see how we go. This is Lord Brahma's answers to the last question. And here we're going to hear about the Lord's subtle and gross expansions. Excuse me. So last we heard how Mahavishnu, all these universes are expanding, manifesting from his body. And then Mahavishnu himself expands as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And from him, the Virat Rupa manifests. So I have a question. And the question is, who is the super soul of creation? Who is the super soul of creation? Who is the super soul of creation? Madala says Mahavishnu. Very good. Right. Who is the super soul of a universe? Who is the super soul of a universe? Or the universe? Right. Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Who is the super soul of creation in terms of matter? Within the universe? Who is the super soul of creation of matter? Super soul of matter, material body, elements. Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Good. And then we know that even of this body, the super soul is there. That's Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Just as this body got a super soul, got a soul, who is the soul of the universe? Who is the soul of the universe? So we know Garbhodakshay Vishnu is the super soul. Who is the soul of the Lord Brahma? Yes. Lord Brahma is the soul of the universe. And just as this body, there's a super soul, there's the soul, and I have a gross and subtle body. So the gross form of the universe, which is spiritually gross, is Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And the subtle form of the universe is Garbhodakshay Vishnu's Virat form. So the Virat form is the subtle form of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So the Lord has both a gross form and a subtle form, like we have, but his gross form and subtle form is not material. It is of a spiritual nature. His body is spiritual, and he also has a subtle form, which is the Virat. And now we're going to talk about the gross manifestation coming from the gross spiritual form of the Lord. And we're going to hear about the subtle manifestations coming from the subtle form of the Lord in terms of the Virat Rupa. Both gross and subtle elements are being manifested in this creation coming from the Supreme Personality of God. Godhead. This chapter is also entitled Purusha Shukta Confirmed. And one reason, the Purusha Shuktas are verses of glorification found in the Rig Veda, which the demigods recite in glorification of the Supreme Lord in the Milk Ocean, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. So when they go when they want to want the Lord's protection in the universe, they go to him and they offer the Purusha Shukta, different prayers, glorification. And what's interesting is the verses that are described in this chapter, they correspond very closely to the prayers in the Purusha Shukta. So the philosophical points of glorification of the Supreme Lord in the Purusha Shukta, which is coming from the Smriti, they are corresponding, or the verses in the Bhagavatam are corresponding to those same verses. Therefore, this chapter is entitled Purusha Shukta Confirmed. And this chapter specifically talks about the material cause. Govarg Sai Vishnu's limbs provide the ingredients of the universe. Everything that we see is really coming from the Supreme Lord. The essential aspect of sadhana, in terms of the process of devotional service that we get from this chapter, as we're reading through these verses, as we're associating through these verses, is that we are 100% dependent in every aspect. We think we are independent. This is the problem. This is the illusion. Actually, we are completely dependent on the Supreme Lord. And we can also use these verses to remind ourselves, just like in the Bhagavad Gita, in different places like the 10th chapter, etc., the Lord explains the opulences, chapter entitled Opulences of the Absolute, where the Lord describes, for example, of the fish, I'm the shark, of the mountains, I'm the Himalayas, the sun and the moon are my eyes, etc. So in this way, the Lord is sharing his opulences, and when we see the opulences around us, we remember the Supreme Lord. So as we're reading these verses and going through these verses, let us also remember and contemplate about all these different elements that firstly we are totally dependent on, which implies if we're depending on these elements, we are depending on the Supreme Lord. And secondly, that we can remember these elements and how they are connected and coming from Supreme Lord, thereby remembering the Supreme Lord. And as we said, the elements are coming from Govarg Sai Vishnu, who's coming from Mahavishnu, who's coming from the expansions of the Supreme Personality of God at Sankarshan, who's coming from the expansions of Balaram, who's coming from Krishna, the Supreme Personality. So therefore, in this way, we are eternally dependent on the Supreme Lord, and we can remember the Supreme Lord. In this way, we can nurture our devotion to the Supreme Lord. Text 1. Brahmo vacha vacham vaner mukham kshetram chandasam saptadata tava avyakar yamritannam nanam jiva sarva rahasya cha. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and the 6 other layers are the generating centers of Vedic hymns. And his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and the delicacies for offering to the demigods, forefathers, and the people, or the general mass of people. So now we are hearing the components, the ingredients, the aspects of creation that we see around us, all generating from the Virat Purusha. Purport. The opulences of the universal form of the Lord are described herein. It is said that his mouth is the generating center of all kinds of voices, and its controlling deity is fire, is the fire demigod. The power to speak is coming from Krishna. Prabhupada used this point in relation to, for example, Einstein is glorified as a very elevated and powerful scientist. And, people exalt his glories because no doubt he was very intelligent. Now, Prabhupada says, wonderful, you're glorifying the scientists, but you're not able to make a brain like the one he had. So who made his brain for him to be so powerful? Why don't you find out that person? Because that person must be definitely very, very glorious. The person who made his brain. Prabhupada also makes the other point. The atheist says there is no God. Okay, who gives you the power to say there is no God? Here we see the power, the generating center of all voices. It's coming from the universal form, subtle form of Garbhodak Sai Vishnu, Purusha avatars. So that same person who you are denying that he doesn't exist is giving you the power to speak, to say he doesn't exist. Krishna allows you to be independent. Then his skin and the other 6 layers of the bodily constructions are the representative generating center of the 7 kinds of Vedic hymns, like Gayatri. So the 6 bodily layers of construction, if in Ayurveda, this body is constructed with 6 different components. Like, for example, you got skin, you got bone, you got blood, you got marrow, different aspects like that, air. So there's 6 different components in Ayurveda that makes us its body, which means that your body, for you to exist, you are dependent on Krishna. So in so many ways, we are seeing that all that I need and all that's created is really dependent and coming from the Lord. The Gayatri is the beginning of all Vedic mantras, and it is explained in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Since the generating centers are the different parts of the universal form of the Lord, and since the form of the Lord is transcendental to the material creation, is to be understood that the voice, the tongue, the skin, etc., suggests that the Lord in his transcendental form is not without them. So whatever we see, whatever we got, Krishna's got. Because why? They're coming from him. So he has to have these things for him to generate it in terms of what we got. But what we have is material. And what he's got is spiritual. We also have the spiritual side of our nature. But right now, we are caught up on the wrong side of our existence, on the perverted side of our existence. We need to flip that. Krishna consciousness is a process of purifying and flipping that, so that now, instead of living on the material plane, I live on the spiritual plane. Instead of living on the plane of exploitation, I live on the plane of service. Instead of living on the plane of lust, I live on the plane of love. Instead of living on the plane of me, the center, I live on the plane of Krishna in the center. The material voice and the energy for taking food, the material voice and the energy for taking in foodstuffs are generated originally from the Lord. Such actions are but perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. Transcendental situation is not without spiritual variegatedness. In the spiritual world, all the perverted forms of material variegatedness are fully represented in the original spiritual identity. And that's why we find Prabhupada again and again would say, Krishna is very simple. You're already watering, you already engage in watering the watering process. And what's the watering process? Service. You already engage in service. Consider, you're serving so many people. Day and night. From your senses to your boss, to your family, to the country, to your pet dog, you're serving. There's no question of not serving. Everyone is serving. So yes, you're watering, you're serving the tree, but you're serving all the parts of the tree and not the root. So Krishna consciousness is very simple. Start serving the root. As soon as you start serving the root, life begins to change. The variegatedness is not going to change, but the objective changes, the experience changes from matter to spirit, from temporary to eternality, from Nirvananda to Ananda. The bliss changes. The only difference is that material activities are contaminated by the three modes of nature, whereas the potencies in the spiritual world are all pure because they are engaged in the unalloyed transcendental loving service of the Lord. In the third canto, we will cover instructions of Kapila Dev, if I'm not mistaken. And there, Kapila Dev will be discussing 81 different ways of engaging in devotional service, which means we can engage in devotional service in 81 different levels, 81 different ways, according to the modes of material nature. You can chant your rounds in the mode of ignorance. You can chant your rounds in the mode of passion. You can chant your rounds in the mode of goodness. You can chant your rounds in 81 different ways according to the mixtures of these three modes. So it's not a question of, am I chanting my rounds? Yeah, you're chanting your rounds. But what type of rounds you're chanting? Because if you're chanting according to the 81 varieties of modes, then the effect is not going to be perceived as if you're chanting in a mode of Suddha Sattva. But it's better to chant in the mode of goodness than to chant in the mode of passion. So we want to move from engaging in devotional service from the mixtures of the varieties of modes, going from ignorance, passion, goodness, and then pure goodness. Because in the spiritual world, you are engaging in glorification of the Lord and in the service of the Lord, be outside the modes. There is no modes there. Whereas in the material world, you are interacting with the modes. Here's another aspect of this point. The only difference is that material activities are contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Our interaction in this world is filtered through the three modes of material nature, is enacted on the level of the three modes of material nature. So we individually want to transcend the modes. I want to try to act above the modes of material nature. In regards to the three modes, the Lord covers at least 100 verses in the Bhagavad Gita on the subject. Because we are influenced, we are plagued by it. We need to transcend, we need to elevate ourselves. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that the Vedas, Gunya Vishaya Veda, the Vedas deal with these three guns, three modes. But Arjuna, transcend the three modes, rise above the three modes. Don't be influenced by the three modes. So we want to not be influenced by the three modes. We want to bring our devotion and our character, our life, our existence above the three modes. Hopefully in the future, we'll do a full course of Vedic psychology, which just focuses only on these three modes, so that we can identify these three modes, we can relate to these three modes, and understand their three modes, and then rise above. The second aspect of this is, that's for me, Now we should know that every single one of us are interacting with these three modes, which means that somebody may be interacting with me influenced by the lower modes. It's not them that is the issue. It's the modes that are the issue. And because the modes which they influenced under allow them to say and act and do things related to the modes, which we then perceive as inauspicious, our reaction to these things or our reaction to that person should be with a higher perspective of life. Hate the sin, not the sinner. Hate the modes, not the person under the influence of the modes. And we see how Srila Prabhupada, even those who were influenced by lower modes, Prabhupada always extended his mercy, always encouraged. Why? Because he wasn't hating the person. He was loving the person. Why? The person is a servant of Krishna. So he saw beyond the negative interaction. He was seeing the soul. This is a servant of Krishna. And yes, temporarily they're influenced by the lower modes. Therefore, I should keep showering, keep praying for them, keep blessing them. So in this way they can come out. So if anybody has a negative interaction with us, we should see beyond that. We should know that they are simply influenced by the lower modes at that specific time. And therefore, we do the needful, but not see the person as negative, see the person as bad. It's the modes that are bad. The person is always an eternal servant of Krishna. And from our perspective, we want to raise our consciousness so that we can be above the modes of material nature, so that when we interact with people around us, we're always interacting on at least the mode of goodness, and preferably as far as possible to start transacting on the platform of Suddha Sattva, beyond the mode of goodness. And going beyond the mode of goodness simply means keeping Krishna always in the center of our interactions. Prabhupada then continues, in the spiritual world, the Lord is the sublime enjoyer of everything. And the living entities there are all engaged in his transcendental loving service without any contamination of the modes of material nature. The activities in the spiritual world are without any of the inebriaties of the material world. But there is no question of impersonal voidness of the spiritual platform, as suggested by the impersonalists. Devotional service defined in the Narada Pancharatra as follows. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tat paret vena nirmalam. Rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. Process of sadhana bhakti is simply engaging our senses in the service of the master of the senses. This is bhakti. And what will happen in turn? We will become free, sarvapadi, become free from all upadis, all designations. I'm this, I'm that, I'm male, I'm female, I'm father, I'm mother, I'm an engineer, I'm a guru, I'm a disciple. All these designations will become free. And I will also become free from all impurities, tatparet ver nirmalam, become free from all impurities, all anarthas, so that I'll be able to serve with pure devotion. Sevanam bhakti ruchati, that is pure devotion service. Originally, since all the senses are produced of the Lord's reservoir of senses, the sensual activities of the material world are to be purified by the process of devotional service. And thus the perfection of life can be attained simply by purifying the present position of our material activities. All our senses are coming from Krishna. If Krishna is the source of everything, then the perfect thing to do is to use everything in the service of the source. So I have senses. Where did they come from? Krishna, Mahavishnu, from Garbhadaksa Vishnu, from the Virat Rupa. If they're coming from him, then they should be employed in his service. Now they are contaminated. What's that contamination? I'm using it for my service, for immediate, extended sense gratification. Okay, I understand they're coming from Krishna. What should I do? I should now purify them. I should now dovetail them in his service. And by the purifying process, and the purifying process begins from the stage of being liberated from the conception of different designations. Every living entity is engaged in some sort of service, either for the self or for the family or for the society, the country, etc. But unfortunately, all such services are rendered due to material attachment. The attachments of material affinity may be simply changed to the service of the Lord, and thus the treatment for becoming freed from material attachment begins automatically. As I was making the point, we're already serving. Just change where that service is directed to. Put it directed to the roots, directed to the Supreme Lord. And then automatically you become purified. The process of liberation is therefore easier through devotional service than any other method. For in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that one is subjected to various kinds of tribulations if one is impersonally attached. Klesho, Dikataras, Tesam, Avyakta, Shakta, Chetasam. If you're meditating on the impersonal and trying to serve the impersonal, it's very difficult. You can't feed the impersonal. But the personal form of Krishna, you can feed him, you can clothe him, you can worship him, you can glorify him, you can see him, you can touch him. So the personal process of devotional service is so wonderful. What we have got from Srila Prabhupada is the most glorious. Srila Rupa Goswami glorifies Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Namo Mahavadanyaya. He is the most munificent, is the most magnificent, the most charitable. Why? Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's the most munificent, has given to the most fallen souls of Kali Yuga the most exalted process of loving devotional service, the residents of the gopis, the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis, in the most simplest of processes, devotional service, starting with chanting Hare Krishna. And who has given us that process, or who has disseminated that to us? Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada is giving the highest to the lowest in the most easiest way. What more could we ask? Therefore, munificent, magnificent, glorious, wonderful. Because generally, if you give the most easiest process to someone, it's unlikely, very rare, that that will be the most exalted. Yes, most unqualified means they need to have the easiest thing, but generally you're not going to get the highest. It's like if you want to, make money in the world, you need to be educated. You can't. Nobody that's not educated, somebody that's not educated cannot be able to generate wealth. They have to qualify. They have to skill themselves. But here we have the most easiest process given to the most downtrodden, fallen souls of Kali Yuga. But we're getting the most exalted, the most highest. Even most exalted processes cannot give you that access. This is extraordinary. This is incomparable. You can be the best yogi of creation. the best Jnani of creation, in the history of creation. And you will not get the highest love displayed by the residents of Vrindavan. And yet somebody is chanting Hare Krishna as excess. This is the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya. So very simple, very easy. We cannot complain. There is no reason to complain. So these are just a summary of the opulences that we're going to hear as we're going. So we already covered text 1, 7 dhatus, the 7 Vedic men. The dhatus are the manifestation of what constitutes body, but at the same time, it's also connected to the Vedic mantras, Vedic meters. And now we're going to hear all the other, right up to verse 12. The body that's created, the hair, the beard, the nails, the arms, from the steps, from the foot, from lotus feet, from evacuation, back, veins, bones, belly, heart, consciousness, all the different aspects that are going to come from the Lord's organs and what it's going to produce. Text 2. Sarva sunam cha vayoscha tannashe paramayena ashvinor oshadani namcha grano moda pramodayo. His 2 nostrils are the generating contents of our breathing, and all other airs. His smelling powers generated the Ashwini Kumaras, demigods, and all kinds of medicinal herbs, and his breathing energies produce different kinds of fragrances. So now you'll notice how there's a connection also from his nostrils, process of breathing, all the airs coming from there, the demigods, Ashwini Kumaras coming, herbs, the breathing energies, different kinds of fragrances. Which means that if I smell the incense, immediately I can think, how wonderful. Who's giving me the ability to smell? Where did this come from? Who generated it? Who's giving me the power to enjoy this, without whom I cannot exist, I cannot even smell? Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Another aspect which is very interesting. We have separated ourselves from Krishna. We left him. We have decided not to serve Krishna. But yet, just see how Krishna is serving us. Why? Because he loves us. As Prabhupada says, Krishna wants us back more than we want to go back. So this is Krishna. He wants us more than we want to go back. Therefore, he is providing in every way for our pleasure. And the more we begin to realize that, the more we will want to turn to him. 3. Rupanam tejasham chakshu diva suryasya chakshini karno disham cha tirthanam srotaram akasha shabdayo. His eyes are the generating centers of all kinds of forms, and they glitter and illuminate. His eyeballs are like the sun and the heavenly planets. His ears hear from all sides and are receptacles of all the Vedas. And his senses of hearing is the generating center of the sky and all kinds of sound. Everything we hear, all the sounds that we perceive with our ears, they're all coming from the Supreme Lord's personality. So we may derive pleasure from hearing. Where is that desire? Where is that potency for you to enjoy sounds coming from? It's coming from Krishna. Everything that I see, I'm deriving pleasure from all these things that I see. Where is that coming from? It's coming from Krishna's eyes, eyeballs, from his eyes. So in this way, everything that all my senses that I engage in to enjoy is really a gift, benediction of Krishna. And in this way, I can remember him, and I want to cultivate my relationship with that person. The word Tirthanam is sometimes interpreted to mean the places of pilgrimage. But Srila Jiva Goswami says that it means the receptacle of the transcendental Vedic knowledge. The propounders of Vedic knowledge are also known as Tirthas. And those who have Krishna consciousness, those like Srila Prabhupada, who is embodiment of Krishna consciousness of Vedic knowledge, they also become places of pilgrimage. 4. Tatkatram vastu sharanam soba kasya chaba janam twag asya sparsha vachyoscha sarvamed dasya chaivahi. His bodily surface is the breathing ground for the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin is the generating center for the moving air and all kinds of sense of touch, and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifices. So any auspicious opportunities that we experience in our life is the blessing of the bodily surface of the Supreme Lord, his skin. Everything that we are able to touch and derive pleasure is coming from the pleasure or the skin of Krishna. All kinds of sacrifices that we perform, that the power, the potency, it's all coming from Krishna. So in this way, again, as we said, if we see practically every aspect of our existence, both gross and subtle, is coming from Krishna. When somebody is, let's go back to our example of molding a form out of clay. So for a form to be complete, I need certain causes. Let's say I'm doing a form of something. That end result of the form is the effect that is coming from the cause. And there may be different causes. So for example, there's the material cause. I need the elements, I need matter, I need clay. So clay is one of the causes of the form. Without that cause, I don't have the form. Without the ingredients, I don't have the form. Then I also need to have the skills, the intellectual skills to design the form. I also need to be there as the person to mold that. Ultimately, if the super soul is not in my body, the body will not function. So like that, there is the instrumental cause, there's the material cause, there's the ultimate cause. We want to see life beyond the immediate cause. We want to see life beyond the material causes. We want to see life beyond these different causes. Ultimately, we want to see that behind everything is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, through his expansions. The air is the moving agent of all planets, and as such, the generating centers for the promotion to the deserving planets, the sacrifice, are his bodily surface and the natural region of all auspicious opportunities. 5. Roman Nyubija Jatinam Yerva yagnas tusam prita kesham smashru na nakanyasya shilalobra vidyutam. The hairs on his body are the cause of all vegetation. If you're eating anything, you're eating vegetables, where did they come from? What's the ultimate cause? Now, you're eating an apple. Where did the apple come from? From the shop. Where did the shop get? From the farmer. Where did the farmer get? From his apple tree. How did he get? The apple tree came from the seed. Where did the seed come from? Another apple. Where did that come from? Well, let's say from the ground or from another apple. Where did that come from? It comes from the hairs on his body. One time they asked Srila Prabhupada, can we teach children, our plants and fruits and etc.? Prabhupada said, yes, but always teach them where it's coming from. Particularly of those trees which are required as ingredients for sacrifice. The hairs on his head and face are reservoirs for all clouds, and his nails are the breeding ground of electricity, stones, and iron ores. So we can see all the different elements and everything we need from in this creation, everything we perceive, everything we see. It has its source in the Virat Rupa, in Gobhadak Sai Vishnu's form, body. Nothing is separate from the Supreme Lord. We are not independent as it's perceived to be. We are totally, completely, fully dependent on the Supreme Lord. We need electricity. Right now, without electricity, I cannot communicate. By whose blessings? Nails of the Supreme Lord. Electricity is coming from, because electricity is an energy. Where is that energy coming from? Yeah, we may say there's, we got power and from ESCOM and, the lines, and yes, that is all the material ingredients and cause that's showing, but who's behind that? The nails of Krishna. So in this way, and electricity is everywhere. Your life cannot be without electricity. Every single day you're using electricity. So anytime you use electricity, anytime you perceive electricity, anytime your mind comes connected to electricity, we can think of the nails of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because his nails are the breeding ground of electricity, stones, iron ores. The polished nails of the Lord generate electricity, and the clouds rest on the hairs of his head. One can therefore collect all sorts of necessities of life from the person of the Lord, and therefore the Vedas affirm that everything that is produced is caused by the Lord. The Lord is the supreme cause of all causes. And that is what the Bhagavatam wants to emphasize. This is what we need to get. It's the essence. That Lord is the supreme cause of all causes. We may not see it, but he is. And once we accept that he's the cause of all causes, everything comes from him. If everything comes from him, what can he not give you? And if he's already giving you so many things, when you not even surrendered completely to his lotus feet, just consider what he'll give you when you actually fully surrender to his divine lotus feet. That should give us hope. And here Prabhupada makes another statement which is very important. One can therefore collect all sorts of necessities of life from the person of the Lord. Whatever we're getting is coming from him. But we should not collect more than necessary. Whatever is necessary, try to accumulate that. Try to use that. Because accumulating more than necessary is also an obstacle. Atyahara prayaschascha prajalpo niyamagraha. Accumulating more than necessary is also an obstacle. 6. Bahavoloka palanam prayasa shema karmanam. The Lord's arms are the productive fields for the great demigods and other leaders of the living entities who protect the general mass. This important verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is corroborated and nicely explained in Bhagavad Gita 10:41 to 42 as follows. Yet viputi mat sattvam Srimad ujitam evatva tat eva gachat tvam mama tejom sa sambhavan atava bahu netena kim natena ta arjuna Vishtyapyam vyaham idam krishnam ekam sena stito jagat. There are many powerful kings, leaders, learned scholars, scientists, artists, engineers, inventors, excavators, archaeologists, industrialists, politicians, economists, business magnates, and many more powerful deities and demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varuna, and Marutu, who are all protecting the interest of the universal affairs of maintenance in different positions, and all of them are different powerful parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is the father of all living entities who are placed in different high and low positions according to their desires and or aspirations. Some of them, as particularly mentioned above, are specifically endowed with the powers by the will of the Lord. A sane person must know for certain that a living being, however powerful he may be, is neither absolute nor independent. So that's another aspect that is connected to Krishna being the cause of all causes. We are not absolute and we are not independent. Everyone is subordinate and dependent on Krishna. All living beings must accept the origin of their specific powers as mentioned in this verse. And if they act accordingly, then simply by discharging their respective occupational duties, they can achieve the highest perfection of life, namely eternal life, complete knowledge, and inexhaustible blessings. As long as the powerful men of the world do not accept the origin of their respective powers, namely the personality of Godhead, the actions of Maya illusion will continue. The actions of Maya are such that a powerful person misled by illusory material energy wrongly accepts himself as all in all and does not develop God consciousness. So no matter what ability and power we have or everyone has in this material world, as soon as they begin to connect that power to the Supreme Lord and understand that, yes, actually Krishna is giving me this power. It's by Krishna's blessings that I have all these abilities and skills, potencies. And therefore, let me use that for his pleasure. As such, the false sense of egoism, namely myself and mine, have become overly prominent in this world. And there is a hard struggle for existence in human society. The intelligent class of men, therefore, must admit the Lord as the ultimate source of all energies and thus pay tribute to the Lord for his good blessings. Simply by accepting the Lord as the supreme proprietor of everything, since he is actually so, one can achieve the highest perfection of life. We're not fabricating something. We're not hallucinating. We're not dreaming. We're not making up something. It is true. He is factually this ultimate cause of everything. We are hearing about it. So if that is his actual position, that he is the proprietor of everything, then give that credit to him. Use everything in his service. You are also coming from him. The abilities you have is coming from him. The results are coming from him. You coming from him. Just direct your attention to him. As soon as you direct your attention to him, you can achieve the highest perfection of life. And you will, it's amazing how Prabhupada, in most of his lectures, he would conclude, surrender to the Supreme Lord, serve Krishna, and you'll see you'll never be the loser. You'll never be the loser. You'll get far more than what you even dreamt of, thought of. Whatever a person may be in the estimation of the social orders of things, if he tries to reciprocate a feeling of love towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is satisfied with the blessings of the Lord, he will at once feel the highest peace of mind for which he is hankering life after life. Doesn't matter what you are doing, just turn towards Krishna. The feelings of gratitude, feeling of satisfaction that, yes, I'm getting blessings. This is the Krishna's blessings. I'm getting Krishna's blessings. And automatically you'll be peaceful. Because the converse is also true. That if everything is coming from Krishna, Krishna is a proprietor, everything is coming from Krishna, he's the cause of all causes, I'm totally dependent on him. Well, then if a negative situation happens in my life, then how do I see that? It's his blessings. He's the cause of all causes. It's coming from him. Why? Because there's a reason. It's for my purification. It's for me to become more surrendered. He knows what I need. He's purifying me of my past karma, etc. We can see it in so many auspicious ways that this is actually a blessing. Krishna's blessing with the conch shell or the lotus, or his blessing with the chakra, is always a blessing. He's bestowing opulence to Sudama. It's a blessing. He's killing the demons. It's a blessing. Because Krishna is embodiment of kindness, blessing, love, nothing else. So whatever we're getting, good and bad, is actually a blessing of Krishna. When we totally surrender to Krishna and return back in the spiritual world, even there, apparent good and bad is an exchange of loving relation with Krishna. What peace of mind, in other words, the healthy state of the mind, can be achieved only when the mind is situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Otherwise, there will be no peace of mind. Right now in the world, mental disease, mental stress is on the increase. So it's like the number one disease. Why? Because everyone has turned their attention away from Krishna. And Krishna consciousness means the process of Krishna, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Become conscious of Krishna. Become conscious of God. Or who's God? Krishna. Therefore, Krishna consciousness. That is why Prabhupada did not want to say the International Society of God Consciousness. No, no, no. Don't even have, one step, then next step. No, no, direct step. Just give them the name. Who is God? Krishna. Directly. You don't even need to ask another question. God, Krishna consciousness. Become conscious of him. Turn your attention. Bring him in your life. And if you already brought him in to some degree, you already brought him in your life. Then purify that even more and more. Intensify that more and more. Solidify that more and more. Purify our mind, our senses, our intention, our aspirations more and more. Until there is absolutely no anarthas, no inhibitions, no modes of material nature. Completely pure. And as we're going through that experience and process, we will feel the mind is becoming more peaceful, satisfied, and therefore that experience you also will feel. The parts and parcels of the Lord are endowed with specific powers of rendering service unto the Lord. Just as a big business magnat's son, I am empowered with specific powers of administration. The embodiment of the son of the father, the obedient son of the father, never goes against the will of the father, and therefore passes life very peacefully in concurrence with the head of the family, the father. Similarly, the Lord, being the father of all living beings, should fully and satisfactorily discharge the duty and the will of the Father as faithful sons. This very mentality will at once bring peace and prosperity to human society. Prabhupada gives a wonderful example, the obedient son of a father. If a father is wealthy, the obedient son automatically enjoys the wealth, benefits from the wealth. All he does is he administers, he serves the father. So like that, all living entities are coming from Krishna. So Krishna is the father. We should also be discharging his desire, his will, because he's our supreme father. And just by that mentality, we will be peaceful. Because the son of a wealthy person doesn't need to worry about wealth. Consider how wealthy is Krishna. There are unlimited universes. So much opulence. And this is the material universes. It's only 1/4 of Krishna's creation. The rest is 3/4. There is no lack of opulence. Krishna has unlimited opulences. In the spiritual world, money, chintamani, is what the ground is made of. Not just money, but wishful money. The ground that you're walking on is wishful. It can give you anything. The trees are wishful. They can give you anything. Every home is made of gold, bedecked with jewels. There's no lack. There is no lack. You don't need to worry about survival in the spiritual world. It's all about service. So when one is surrendered to the Supreme Lord, then one is peaceful and prosperity is already there. So Krishna can give both peace and prosperity if we turn our attention to him. 7. And right now, we've placed ourselves in the mess. Therefore, we're struggling hard for survival. And yes, we would love if it could be solved in an instant. And yes, Krishna can solve it in an instant. But he's not. Why? Because he knows that if I solve it in an instant and I give you all the prosperity you want, what will happen? You go back to square one. We'll exploit it. So Krishna will never give us any situation where we will begin to exploit. Therefore, we need to purify our existence. And for that, the Lord will make whatever arrangements that is suitable for us to keep progressing. Text 7. Vikramo burbhuva swascha shemasya sharanasya cha sarvakama varasyapi harescharana aspadam. Thus, Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection for all kinds of fear. The absolute protection for all sorts of fear, as well as for all our needs of life. We must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And not only in this planet, but also in the upper, lower, and heavenly planets. This absolute dependence on the lotus feet of the Lord is called pure devotional service. And it is directly hinted at within this passage. We all require protection. We all experience different forms of fear. We all experience different lacks, different forms of lack. We need different necessities. If we turn our attention to the lotus feet of Krishna, these get fulfilled, we get protected. When we see the deity form of the Lord, we see the lotus feet. From the lotus feet, we move up. First and second cantos are the lotus feet of the Lord. So we need to cultivate dependence on the lotus feet of Krishna. Think of the lotus feet of Krishna. Also, under the lotus feet of Krishna, Krishna has different symbols. By meditating on those different symbols, we also purify our life. The different symbols also have different power and potency to do the needful. So in this way, by meditating, depending on the lotus feet, no one should have any kind of doubt in this matter, nor should one be inclined to seek the help of any other demigods, because all of them are dependent on him only. See, this verse is saying that the lotus feet of the Lord are the protection for the higher, lower, and middle. So if the demigods need Krishna's protection, then why should you depend on the demigods to give you protection? Because they're going to have to get it from Mahavishnu anyway, from Garubhadra Vishnu anyway. They're going to have to get it from the Lord anyway. So why go through a middleman? And if he doesn't totally depend on the Lord, then you're stuck. You're going to have a problem. So therefore, just go directly to the Supreme Lord's shelter, not indirectly. Everyone except the Lord himself is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Everyone. No one is an exception. We need Krishna's mercy. Even the all-pervading super soul is also dependent on the supreme aspect of Bhagavan, the personality of God. How amazing. So every living entity is dependent on Krishna's mercy. And even the super soul is dependent on Krishna's mercy. When somebody reads this, what? God dependent on God? This is establishing the wonderful supreme position of Shamsundar, Brajendra Nandan Krishna. Because the super soul is an expansion of Garbhodaksai Vishnu, is an expansion of Mahavishnu, is an expansion of Krishna's expansion, ultimately Balaram, who's an expansion of Krishna. Therefore, there is dependence. All expansions of Krishna. Only Krishna is Swarat, fully independent. And therefore, our relationship that we're cultivating with is with the supreme, independent, autocratic personality of Godhead, Krishna. Ishwara Parama Krishna, Sachidanand Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govina Sarva Karana Karana. He's the cause of all causes. He is completely independent. 8. Apam Viryasya Sargasya Arjan Yasya Prajapate Sam Shishna upashtashtu prajatyananda nirvrite. From the Lord's genitals originate water, semen, generatives, rains, and the procreators. His genitals are the cause of a pleasure that counteracts the distress of begetting. Prabhupada gives an interesting purport. The genitals and the pleasure of begetting counteracts the distresses of family encumbrances. Raising a family is not easy. Having a child is painful. You get labor pains, etc. But there is a pleasure inbuilt in that process. And where is that pleasure coming from? Krishna. One would cease to generate altogether if there were not, by the grace of the Lord, a coating, a pleasure-giving substance on the surface of the generative organs. This substance gives a pleasure so intense that it counteracts fully the distress of family encumbrances. And we see, because of this pleasure-giving substance, and because of the lack of understanding its source, people get so caught up in it to exploit it because they want more and more of this pleasure. Whereas with devotees, how do we perceive this? Prabhupada says, a person is so captivated by this pleasure-giving substance that he is not satisfied by begetting a single child, but increases the number of children with great risk in regard to maintaining them, simply for this pleasure-giving substance. And nowadays, they even would want this pleasure-giving substance without the responsibility of children. This pleasure-giving substance is not false. However, because it originates from the transcendental body of the Lord. So the pleasure that is there is not fictitious, it's not false, it's real, it's coming from Krishna. In other words, the pleasure-giving substance is a reality, but it has taken on an aspect of pervertedness on account of material contamination. So people don't want the responsibility and they don't understand it's coming from Krishna, therefore they go in different perverted ways, they exploit, have children abort them, or have artificial means to exploit this pleasure substance. So the soul is pleasure seeking. Krishna is giving this form of pleasure. And it's only a fraction of 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 Krishna's pleasure. Imagine if we directly surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What pleasure is awaiting there? And the beauty is, we're engaging in devotional service not for that pleasure. Yet, by serving, there is pleasure. Prabhupada continues. In the material world, sex life is the cause of many distresses on account of material contact. Therefore, sex life in the material world should not be encouraged beyond the necessity. And what is the necessity? The necessity is to bring up God-conscious children, not more than that. There is a necessity for generating progeny even in the material world, but such generation of children must be carried out with full responsibility for spiritual values. That means you should only be having children. For you to get this pleasure, you need to have children. You should only be having children for you to raise children with full responsibility for spiritual values, to bring them up spiritually. Otherwise, not. The spiritual values of life can be realized in the human form until existence, and the human being must adopt family planning with reference to the context of spiritual values and not otherwise. So we cannot just enjoy and exploit the pleasure and not take full responsibility of why that pleasure is there. Krishna knows that to make children, to raise children is difficult. Therefore, he gives the pleasure. And in this way, population can continue. But it should be with a spiritual focus. The family planning should be with a spiritual focus, not for exploitation and not against spiritual values. The degraded form of family restriction by the use of contraceptives, etc., is the grossest type of material contamination. Materialists who use these devices want to fully utilize the pleasure potency of the coating on the genitals by artificial means, without knowing the spiritual importance of human form of life. In other words, without knowledge of spiritual values, the less intelligent man tries to utilize only the material sense pleasures of the genitals. So even the pleasure that's ruling the creation is coming from Krishna. 9. Payur yamasya mitrasya parimokshasya narada himsaya nirter mrityor nirayasya gudam smarta. O Narada, the evacuating outlet of the universal form of the Lord is the abode of the controlling deity of death, Mitra. And the evacuating hole in the rectum of the Lord is the place of envy, misfortune, death, hell, etc. So even all the inauspicious aspects that exist in this material world is coming from Krishna. And therefore, when we experience any of these things, when we experience death, envy, misfortune, hell, when you're in that situation, just think, it's all coming from Krishna. This is Krishna's aspect, evacuating holes, rectum, that's manifesting in this way. And we can then go further. This is all coming from Vishnu. This is all coming from Balaram. This is all coming from my supreme worshipable Lord, Krishna. Let me surrender to him, that divine, beautiful form of Krishna. And in this way, your life becomes perfect, even in hellish situation. 10. Parabhuter adharmasya tamasas chapi pashima nadyo nada nadinam cha kotranam ashti samhati. The back of the Lord is the place of all kinds of frustration and ignorance, as well as for immorality. From his veins flow the great rivers and rivulets, and his bones are stacked the great mountains. In order to defy the impersonal conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a systematic analysis of the physiological and anatomical constitution of his transcendental body is given here. It is clear from the available descriptions of the body of the Lord, his universal form, that the form of the Lord is distinct from the form of ordinary mundane conception. In any case, he is never a formless void. Ignorance is the back of the Lord, and therefore the ignorance of the less intelligent class of men is also not separate from his bodily conception. So when you see ignorance, who are you going to remember? Just like when you see, I don't know, how many of you remember the Ghostbusters? Who are you going to call? The Ghostbusters. So when you see ignorance, who are you going to call? Refer to Mahavishnu. Refer to Virat Rupa, Garbhasai Vishnu, and then link it back. Krishna. Every aspect. There is nothing in this material creation that we perceive and experience is independent of Krishna. Therefore, how can we not be Krishna conscious? Since his body is the complete whole of everything that be, one cannot assert that he is impersonal only. On the contrary, the perfect description of the Lord holds that he is both impersonal and personal simultaneously. The personality of Godhead is the original feature of the Lord, and his impersonal emanation is but a reflection of his transcendental body. Those who are fortunate enough to have a view of the Lord from the front can realize his personal feature, whereas those who are frustrated and thus are kept on the ignorant side of the Lord, or in other words, those who have the view of the Lord from the back, realize his impersonal feature. So Krishna is a loving father. He's providing the good and the bad, the personal and the impersonal, from the front and from the back. He is the father providing the needs of every of his son. Just like a naughty son, when he's crying and he's throwing tantrums and he wants something which the father doesn't want to give and he's crying, eventually father says, okay, go cut it. So in this way, Krishna is also providing. At the same time, Krishna is providing, and at the same time, he's revealing what he really wants. Therefore, he appears in the form of the Bhagavatam to give us what we truly want. 11. Avyakta rasasin dunam bhutanam nidanasya cha udaram viditam pumso riddayam manasa padam. The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of the great oceans. His belly is the resting place of material annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of the living beings. Thus, it is known by the intelligent class of man. In the Bhagavad Gita 8:17-18, it is stated, according to human calculation, one day of Brahma is equal to 1,000 cycles of the 4 millenniums, the 4 yugas, 4,320,000 years. And that of the same period is also calculated to be his night. Brahma lives for 100 such years and then dies. A Brahma who is generally a great devotee of the Lord attains liberation after such a fall down, such a downfall. That means when he dies. The universe called the Brahmanda, or the round football-like domain controlled by a Brahma, is thus annihilated, and thus the inhabitants of the particular planet or the whole universe are also annihilated. Avyakta, mentioned here in this verse, means the night of Brahma. When partial annihilation takes place, the living entities of that particular Brahmanda, up to the planets of Brahmaloka, along with the big oceans, etc., all repose in the belly of the Virat Purusha. At the end of the Brahma's night, the creation again takes place, and the living entities reserved within the belly of the Lord are let loose to play their respective parts as if being awakened from a deep slumber. So now we are hearing about, we heard about the whole creation, manifestation and destruction from Mahavishnu's body. All the living entities manifest and then they merge back into him. Now there is a partial manifestation and destruction within the universe. When Brahma is born, he creates. When Brahma's night or Brahma's day, he creates. Brahma's night, there is destruction, and all that which is destroyed in the universe besides Brahmaloka goes into the Virat form, the belly of the Virat form, like exactly the major destruction, but with the karma and the swabhava. They don't lose, the living entities don't lose anything. Creation, Brahma wakes up again, next day, creates, they all come manifest again in the creation, and life goes on. Since the living entities are never destroyed, the annihilation of the material world does not annihilate the existence of the living entities. But until liberation is attained, one has to accept one material body after another again and again. The human life is meant for making a solution to this repeated change of bodies and thereby attain a place in the spiritual sky, where everything is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. In other words, the subtle forms of the living entities rest within the heart of the Supreme Being, and such forms take tangible shape at the time of creation. So from the Lord's heart comes the subtle form as well. 12. Dharmasya mama tubhyam cha kumara nam bhavasya cha vignanasya cha sattvasya parasyatma parayana. Also, the consciousness of that great personality is the abode of religious principles, mine, yours, Lord Shiva's, and the abode of those of the four bachelors, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumar. That consciousness is also the abode of truth and transcendental knowledge. So Krishna has even got consciousness. The Virat Rupa, the form of God, Garbhodaya Vishnu is also consciousness, also has consciousness. And from that consciousness, religious principles are manifested. In this verse, the last line, first word, Parasyatma. That Parasyatma, Acharyas say that this is also the Antakarana, the subtle body. Our subtle body is coming from this part of Krishna, of Garbhodaya Vishnu. And the four components of the Antakarana is Chitta, Ahankara, Buddhi, and Manas. So when we talk about a subtle body, this is the subtle body. It's made of the Chitta, which is the past reservoir of all our impressions. It's made of the Buddhi, the intelligence, made of the mind, Manas, and then the Ahankara, the false identification. So these four basically is the subtle form. 13 to 16. Aham bhavan bhavaschaiva ta ime manayo graja sura nara naga kaga mriga sharishri pa gandharva sarasho yakshal raksho bhuta ganoragam Pashava pitarasida vyadaras charanam druma anye cha vivada jiva jalastala nabokakasha graharsha ketavastaras taditastanait nava sarvam pum sha evadam Bhutam bhavyam bhavachayat te nedam avritam vishvam vittastim adishtati. Beginning from me, Brahma is speaking to Narad Muni, down to you, and Baba, Shiva, all the great sages who were born before you, the demigods, the demons, the nagas, the human beings, the birds, the beasts, as well as the reptiles, etc., and all phenomenal manifestation of the universe, namely the plants, stars, asteroids, luminaries, lightning, thunder, and the inhabitants of the different planetary systems, namely the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Yakshas, the Rakshas, Bhuta Ganas, Uragas, Pashus, Pitas, Siddhas, Vidadaras, Charanas, and all other different varieties of living entities, including the birds, beasts, trees, and everything that be, are all covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present, and future. Although he is transcendental, all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his partial representation as the Supersoul, measures not more than 9 inches, expands by his potent energy in the shape of the universal form, which includes everything manifested in different varieties of organic and inorganic materials. So the Supersoul, which is non-different from Garbhodaya Vishnu, non-different from Shailataka Vishnu, they basically expand and cover everything that exists, and they beyond the material creation. The manifested varieties of the universe are therefore not different from the Lord, just as the golden ornament of different shapes and forms are non-different from the original stock of reserved gold. In other words, the Lord is the supreme person who controls everything within creation, and still he remains a supreme separate identity, distinct from all manifested material creation. In Bhagavad Gita 9.4.5, he is therefore said to be Yogeshwar. Everything rests on the potency of Lord Shri Krishna, and still the Lord is different from and transcendental to all such identities. In the Vedic Purusha Shukta of the Rig Mantra, this is confirmed. This philosophical truth of simultaneous oneness and different was propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is known as the Chintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. So everything is coming from Krishna. It is him and is not him. He is separate in the spiritual world, totally independent, and yet all this is manifestation of him and his creation. Therefore, certain verses in the Vedas say that it's him. It's all one. And that's true. But because they don't know the higher truths of Krishna in the spiritual world, totally independent of material creation, they cannot reconcile this. Srila Mahaprabhu is giving us Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. Everything is him and everything is not him. It's him in relation to Garbhadaksai, Vishnu, Virat Rupa, everything's expanding from him, everything is non-different from him. It's not him as Sham Sundar Krishna in Vrindavan, in Goloka Vrindavan, totally independent and separate. Therefore, Achintya Bheda Bheda. Brahma, Narad, and all others are simultaneously one with the Supreme Lord and different from him. We are all one with him in quality, just as gold ornaments are one in quality with the stock of gold. But the individual gold ornaments is never equal in quantity with the stock of gold. The stock of gold is never exhausted, even if there are innumerable ornaments emanating from the stock, because the stock is Purnam, complete. Even if Purnam is deducted from Purnam, still the Supreme Purnam remains the same Purnam. The fact is inconceivable to our present imperfect senses. Lord Chaitanya therefore defined his theory of the philosophy as Achintya, inconceivable. And as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita as well in Bhagavatam, Lord Chaitanya's theory of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva is perfect philosophy of the absolute truth. So yes, one in difference. One in quality, in gold, same quality, but in quantity, Krishna is the source. We are minute dependent creations coming from the source. Om Purnam Adapurnam. Right? Complete units are coming from the complete source. Each is still in identity separate, quality the same, quantity different. And it's Achintya Bheda Bheda. It's inconceivable. You'll never be able to completely understand it. It's inconceivable how this is the case, but this is the case, and therefore we accept it. And with this understanding, we always know that Krishna, his position can never be taken by any living entity. 17. Swadishnyam pratapam prano vahischa pratapyat josho evam virajam pratahams tatta tapa tyantara bahim puman. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his universal form, maintaining everything in both the creation, both internally and externally. The universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord, known as the Brahma Jyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. Sunshine may expand all over the universe, but the source of the sunshine, namely the sun planet or the deity known as Surya Narayan, is the basis of such radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the basis of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti radiation, or the impersonal feature of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:27. So the universal form of the Lord is the secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord. But the primary form of the Lord is Sham Sundar, with two hands, playing on his flute, eternal flute. 75% of the expansive radiation of the Lord is manifested in the spiritual sky, Tripadi Vibhuti. And 25% of his personal radiation comprehends the entire expansion of the material universes. This is also explained and stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:42. Thus, the 75% expansion of his radiation is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy of the Lord. Living entities who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions are his marginal energy, Tatastha Shakti, and they are at liberty to live in either the energies, the external or internal. Those who live within the spiritual expansions of the Lord are called liberated souls, whereas the residents of the external expansion are called conditioned souls. We can just make an estimate of the number of residents of the internal expansions in comparison with the number of residents in the external energy, and may easily conclude that the liberated souls are far more numerous than the conditioned souls. Mantra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So yes, Krishna's expansion, both internal or the internal energy and the external energy, spiritual world, the material world. There are far more living entities in Goloka Vrindavan and in spiritual world than in the material world. We are the minority here. We should not get caught up by saying, oh, so little devotees here. No, the majority of them are all in the spiritual enjoying. That's where we need to go. That's where we need to eternally reside. We have the process. We have the knowledge. We simply have to realize our good fortune that we have, after traveling so long, finally come to the end of our journey. A journey that has gone through so much suffering and enjoyment in the material world, separate from Krishna. We have finally come to the end. There is light at the end of this tunnel. Now we are on the final lap. Let us be convinced of this journey. Let us embrace this final lap with full dedication, full commitment, seriousness, and embrace the process Srila Prabhupada has given us with full shelter at his lotus feet. He's blessed every single one of us to perfect our Krishna consciousness. The blessing is there, the mercy is there, the process is there, everything is there. We simply have to embrace, perfect our life, and help perfect others. This will please Srila Prabhupada, this will please the Supreme Lord, and whatever comes, the good, the bad, the ugly, is all coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is coming from the Virat Rupa, the manifestation of the Lord, the Garbhodak Sai Vishnu. We are totally dependent in every way on the mercy of Krishna. And dependence is wonderful, especially with Krishna. Why? Because depending on Krishna, Krishna will never, ever exploit you. His heart is full of kindness, of love, of compassion, of generosity. Not like the experience of the material world. In the material world, we don't like to depend on people. Why? Because of exploitation. Krishna, the pure devotees, they're totally different. And therefore, this is the only option, to turn our attention to the Supreme Lord, surrender, and in this way, experience what we truly are looking for. The eternal service, mercy, protection, kindness of Krishna. Pantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari. Any questions, feedback, reflections? Sangeeta says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for grouping class. Thank you. Amavati Nalini Kanta says, thank you Prabhu for the beautiful class, like a musical symphony describing how everything comes from Krishna and how Krishna gives us everything so perfectly. Krishna is so kind and brilliant. Srila Prabhupada's fantastic purports. Thank you for Mother Madhuri for the spectacular pictures. We are grateful. Hari Hari Bol. Yes. Mother Sangeeta says, yes, the pictures are awesome view throughout the class. They allow us to focus, allow us to remember. The chitta has all the impressions of all our past nonsense. We want to reverse that. We want to have only impressions of Krishna. So in every way, in every aspect, in every interaction, some or other, the imprints. Like if you look at my background picture is of Krishna. Beautiful Krishna. He's hugging this fortunate calf. I pray one day that he may also hug me. So in this way, these pictures also should, every time we just see, it's creating an impression, a samskar in our chitta. This way, replacing all the old chittas. Mother Vash. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the Krishna Kara. What a potent download today's class was. Thanks for expanding my vision or spiritualizing it today. Simply amazing. Everything mundane is not mundane anymore. Hare Krishna. Yes. And that's why in one of the purports of Srila Prabhupada said the material world is the kingdom of God. How is it the kingdom of God? Because everything's coming from him. Well, he's here. It's all his expansion, and he's here, which means in one sense, nothing's material. It is only material when you want to exploit. You mess the whole thing up. As soon as you decide to exploit, let me enjoy, there, material. But as soon as you say it's all for Krishna's play, it all becomes spiritual. And it has a different perspective. You perceive it different, the experience will be different. Shamananda Prabhu says, thank you very much for sharing this wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam nectar with us. Really amazing verses and purports, but nice, simple, practical details for us to relate to it and remember Krishna. Ki Jai. Thank you all for your enthusiasm and desire to hear and to associate with the Bhagavatam. It's only by the mercy of Guru Srila Prabhupada, Parampara, and the Bhagavatam that we can associate with them. Bhagavatam can reveal more and more, open his heart. Bhagavatam is Krishna. And as soon as Krishna opens his heart and we're able to enter, that is perfection. So all the mercy of the Bhagavatam. Let us continue becoming more and more, developing more and more lobha, greed, intense greed, to hear, to glorify, to share, to apply, to perfect the glories of the Bhagavatam. And in this way, perfect our lives and help perfect others. Thank you very much. Kwantarat Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Pramanande. We shall see you all. Don't forget, take full advantage of Nirjal Ekadasi to chant, yeah. On Monday, tomorrow is Ekadasi. Monday's Ekadasi, yes. Monday's Ekadasi, Nirjal Ekadasi, to take full opportunity of the day to hear and chant. Thank you. We shall meet again next week.